Ukraine ambushed a huge Russian convoy near Kherson. At first, it looked like Russia's tanks would break through without a fight, but within an hour, everything changed. Vehicles burned, soldiers ran, and the attack collapsed. This was Russia's worst fear coming true. Near Kherson, Russian commanders pushed forward one of their largest armored movements of the week. At 5:20 a.m., satellite feeds identified more than 120 vehicles moving south. Tanks, fuel trucks, armored troop carriers, and supply lorries stretched in a column for kilometers. The convoy believed the route ahead was safe. The road they took had recently been abandoned by Ukrainian units, leaving the impression that resistance had collapsed. Russian staff officers assured their commanders this was a gap in the lines, a chance to drive deeper and resupply frontline positions. Dust rose in massive trails behind the armored columns, marking their movement from miles away. To the crews inside, this was progress. To the Ukrainians watching, it was bait walking into a trap. For weeks, Ukraine had studied this road. Reconnaissance drones mapped the ground daily. Local partisans reported troop movements. Engineers placed minefields in precise locations, buried under layers of dirt so they would only detonate once the heaviest vehicles passed over. Forward observers hid in nearby tree lines, quietly relaying positions to artillery batteries dug in several kilometers away. Every kilometer of road was under surveillance. The Russians thought they were entering open ground. In reality, they were being funneled into a carefully prepared kill zone. At 5:42 a.m., the trap snapped shut. The first tank in the column rolled directly onto a concealed anti-tank mine. The explosion was brutal. A fireball engulfed the vehicle, flipping it sideways and scattering debris across the road. The second explosion followed seconds later, hitting a fuel truck. Flames shot into the air, igniting vehicles around it. Drivers slammed brakes, tracks screeched, and the convoy ground to a halt. Radios erupted with frantic chatter as Russian crews demanded clarity. Some shouted for retreat, others insisted to push forward. Confusion tore through the ranks as smoke filled the dawn sky. In the panic, several vehicles tried to reverse, but the road was blocked. Burning hulks of armor sealed the front. Mines littered the sides. Engines stalled as drivers tried to maneuver out of the kill zone, only to run headlong into wreckage. Crews scrambled out of their hatches, waving rifles, yelling into radios that now only carried static. Ukrainian electronic warfare had cut communications across the area. The Russian convoy wasn't just trapped, it was blind and deaf. Then came the sound no soldier in the open road ever wants to hear: incoming artillery. At 5:46 a.m., Ukrainian batteries hidden kilometers away opened fire. Shells whistled overhead and detonated across the middle of the convoy. Explosions sent shockwaves through the morning air, tearing supply trucks apart and shredding infantry carriers. Columns of fire erupted across the road. Soldiers dove for cover but found none. Trees splintered, asphalt cratered, and vehicles were tossed aside. Within minutes, more than a dozen vehicles were destroyed outright. Overhead, Ukrainian drones hovered silently, laser designating priority targets. A command truck near the center of the column lit up in the drone feed. Seconds later, artillery fire walked onto its position. The truck erupted, its roof blown skyward. Flames engulfed nearby carriers. Soldiers stumbled out, some on fire, others running aimlessly through smoke. The convoy had gone from organized advance to chaos in less than 5 minutes. By 5:50 a.m., Kherson's morning skies glowed orange with the flames of burning armor. The ambush had only just begun. At 5:52 a.m., Ukrainian artillery widened the strike. Concealed howitzers unleashed a steady rhythm of shells, pounding the length of the convoy. The road, once filled with rumbling engines, now shook under continuous detonations. Fuel trucks became instant fireballs, their contents igniting into roaring infernos that consumed everything nearby. Flames rose dozens of meters, marking the convoy's position for miles. Russian soldiers scrambled for cover, but there was nowhere to hide. Open road on both sides, mines in the fields, tree lines already crawling with Ukrainian forward observers. The entire column was exposed. Above them, Ukrainian drones circled with ruthless precision. Bayraktar TB2s marked priority targets. their lasers painting fuel carriers and command vehicles. Guided munitions streaked down, hitting trucks with pinpoint accuracy. Each strike produced secondary blasts as ammunition cooked off, sending shrapnel slicing through nearby troops. Soldiers dove to the ground, pressing their helmets against dirt, trying to survive. Commanders shouted for coordination, but radios were useless. Electronic warfare systems jammed communications, leaving isolated units yelling into dead air. The convoy had become a collection of blind pockets, each surrounded by smoke and fire. HIMARS rockets entered the fight. From dozens of kilometers away, precision-guided rounds arced across the morning sky. Their warheads slammed into the rear of the convoy, cutting off retreat completely. Trucks disintegrated into twisted heaps. Supply carriers erupted into massive explosions, scattering debris across hundreds of meters. Survivors who thought they could reverse their vehicles found themselves trapped between burning hulks. The convoy was now pinned from front, rear, and above. There was no way forward, no way back. The impact on morale was immediate. Crews abandoned tanks, stumbling out under black smoke. Some tried to run into nearby fields but were cut down instantly as more shells struck the open ground. Others huddled behind armored hulls, firing rifles aimlessly toward the tree lines. Panic replaced order. What had been one of the most powerful movements of armor in the sector was reduced to disorganized pockets of survival. Ukrainian infantry squads, hidden in the tree lines, prepared their anti-tank weapons. The convoy's nightmare was only intensifying. At 6 a.m., another Bayraktar dropped its payload onto a command truck coordinating the convoy. The strike was surgical. The vehicle vanished in a flash of fire, and the remaining Russian units lost their last functioning node of leadership. Officers were dead, radios jammed, troops stranded. Soldiers yelled for artillery support from their own side, but with communications cut, none arrived. The convoy was on its own. Columns of smoke stretched into the sky. Social media videos later showed the black pillars rising over Kherson's horizon, visible for kilometers. But inside the convoy, Russian troops were cut off from the outside world. The heat from burning fuel trucks made it impossible to regroup. Ammunition inside supply vehicles detonated in chain reactions, each explosion sending waves of panic through already broken ranks. For many, the battle ended right there. They dropped their weapons and fled into the surrounding fields, hunted by drones that never lost track. By 6:05 a.m., the ambush had escalated into complete devastation. Dozens of Russian vehicles were destroyed, fuel supplies were gone, command elements wiped out. The convoy wasn't advancing anymore, it was being systematically erased, and Ukrainian forces weren't finished. At 6:08 a.m., the surviving Russian units tried to regroup. Officers barked orders, waving soldiers out of carriers to form defensive positions along the road. Mortars were quickly unpacked, tubes slammed into the ground, and shells dropped inside. Within minutes, Russian mortar teams began firing blindly into the surrounding tree lines, hoping to suppress hidden Ukrainian infantry. Heavy machine guns mounted on APCs opened up in long bursts, their tracers carving through smoke toward imagined enemies. The convoy was trying to fight back, but every move was anticipated. From the tree lines, Ukrainian infantry teams were already in place. Armed with javelins and NLAWs, they lay waiting in dugouts and foxholes, overlooking the burning convoy. The first missile streaked across the road, striking a Russian tank that had tried to turn its turret toward the forest. The explosion blew the turret clean off, sending it spinning into the air before crashing onto a nearby supply truck. Seconds later, another missile hit an armored personnel carrier. Fire engulfed its rear section, troops spilling out in panic. Every attempt to establish a defensive perimeter was met with precision anti-tank fire. Flanking Ukrainian units began to close in from both ends of the highway. Armored vehicles moved along parallel paths, cutting off any possible breakout. Infantry squads advanced behind them, firing rifles and RPGs into disoriented Russian troops. The convoy, already trapped from artillery and HIMARS strikes, was now sealed from ground maneuver. Soldiers who tried to retreat through the fields found themselves caught in overlapping fire. Ukrainian marksmen picked them off one by one. Mortar crews who thought they were suppressing tree lines were obliterated by counter-battery fire, Ukrainian radars instantly tracing their launches and directing return fire. Russian anti-air systems, dragged along inside the convoy, tried to respond to the drone threat. At 6:15 a.m., several launchers fired missiles into the sky, streaks of smoke carving upwards. But electronic warfare systems jammed their targeting radars. Missiles veered off course, exploding harmlessly in the clouds. Within minutes, Ukrainian artillery locked onto those air defense vehicles. Precision rounds destroyed them before they could reload. The convoy was now truly blind. No eyes in the air, no way to stop the drones above. The scene inside the convoy was chaos. Soldiers abandoned their positions, running from cover to cover as explosions shook the ground. Commanders yelled into broken radios, getting nothing but static. Fuel trucks continued to burn, their heat cooking ammunition inside nearby vehicles. Each secondary explosion sent another wave of panic down the line. Ukrainian infantry pressed closer, their missiles striking with unrelenting accuracy. Bayraktar drones guided more strikes onto clusters of troops trying to regroup around the few operational armored vehicles. Those armored hulls quickly became fireballs. The Russians tried one final desperate measure, pushing their remaining tanks forward in a breakout attempt. Engines roared as 3 T-72s surged down the road, firing shells wildly into the tree lines. For a moment, it looked like they might punch through. But within seconds, they were met with a coordinated wall of fire. Javelins launched from multiple angles. 2 tanks erupted in fire, their crews bailing out as ammunition detonated inside. The third was struck by a top-attack missile, its turret blown apart. The breakout collapsed before it even reached full speed. Ukrainian infantry pressed the advantage. Fighters armed with NLAWS and RPGs fired relentlessly into troop carriers, disabling them one after another. Dismounted Russian soldiers tried to form firing lines, but they were cut down by Ukrainian rifle fire and grenades. Any unit that tried to regroup was struck by overhead artillery, guided by drones. Every move was countered. Every attempt at resistance collapsed. By 6:25 a.m., both ends of the convoy were sealed. Ukrainian flanking units had closed in completely, hemming the Russians into a kill box. The ambush that began with mines had now turned into total encirclement. Fires burned in every direction, smoke covering the battlefield. Survivors were out of ammunition, their morale shattered. The Russian convoy, once over 120 vehicles strong, was now fighting simply to survive another minute. The trap had fully tightened. The destruction was inevitable. At 6:30 a.m., the ambush reached its final stage. Ukrainian artillery shifted fire to mop-up strikes, pounding the last clusters of vehicles that still showed movement. Each blast shredded armored hulls, flipped supply trucks, and scattered Russian soldiers clinging to the wreckage. Drones continued to orbit above, marking any target that tried to move. Fuel trucks already ablaze sent fireballs skyward, and the heat was so intense that nearby vehicles detonated on their own. The road near Kherson, once filled with 120 vehicles in formation, was now a corridor of wreckage and flame. Russian survivors knew they had no chance. Ammunition was nearly gone. Radios were still silent under Ukrainian jamming. Leaders were dead or captured. Infantry huddled behind burned-out vehicles, trying to conserve their last magazines. Some fired hopelessly at the tree lines. Others simply dropped their rifles and raised their hands. Ukrainian squads moved in carefully, clearing the wreckage row by row. Those who surrendered were zip-tied and marched into makeshift holding areas. Those who resisted were eliminated instantly. By now, the road was littered with abandoned helmets, scattered rifles, and vehicles reduced to twisted steel. Bayraktar drones struck the final blow against the convoy's rear. Guided munitions hit 2 remaining command trucks and an ammunition carrier that had somehow survived earlier salvos. The explosion was massive. A plume of fire ripped into the air, scattering debris across the fields. Witnesses later described it as the largest blast of the morning, marking the end of organized resistance. Any Russian unit that could have provided direction was gone. The ambush had shifted from a battle to a cleanup operation. By 7 a.m., Ukrainian forces declared the road secure. Engineers swept for unexploded ordnance. Infantry searched fields and tree lines for stragglers. Dozens of Russian soldiers, starving for ammunition and cut off from their chain of command, were captured without a fight. More than 60 vehicles were confirmed destroyed: tanks, armored personnel carriers, command trucks, and supply carriers. The rest were disabled, burned, or abandoned. The once powerful column was erased in less than 90 minutes. Nearby villagers emerged from their homes to watch the aftermath. Columns of black smoke stretched across the horizon, visible for miles. Videos filmed on cell phones showed burning wrecks lining the highway, explosions still echoing as ammunition cooked off inside destroyed carriers. Those videos spread across social media within hours, reaching millions. For Ukrainians across the country, the images became a symbol of defiance, proof that Russia's convoys, once feared as unstoppable, were now nothing more than targets. Kiev's military command released its official statement. The convoy was annihilated, dozens of prisoners captured, and the road near Kherson fully cleared. Power grids nearby remained intact. Civilian casualties were minimal. Most importantly, Ukrainian morale surged as news spread of the victory. Soldiers in the field described the ambush as precise, disciplined, and devastating. Every weapon, from mines and artillery to drones and javelins, had worked together to produce a textbook kill zone. By 7:30 a.m., the fires still raged, but the battle was over. Ukrainian troops stood over the wreckage, victorious. Russian survivors, cuffed and silent, sat in lines awaiting transport. The highway had been transformed into a graveyard of steel. A convoy that began at dawn as a show of strength had ended as an emblem of Russian overconfidence. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't just another tactical win. It was proof that Ukraine's evolving tactics could turn even the largest armored column into a death trap. What Russia called an advance was, in truth, a slow walk into destruction. And for every mile Russia tried to take, Ukraine was ready to turn that ground into a graveyard. This was only the beginning. If it were you, what would you do? Was it Ukraine's surprise tactics or Russia's failure to adapt under pressure? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every idea helps us piece together the reality on the ground. If you found this video valuable, hit like and subscribe so you won't miss our next frontline breakdown. This is Navy Point, where every battle tells a story. See you on the next mission.